Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for our discussion on securing your infrastructure in a zero trust world. Today my name is Nicole Kyle. I'm Director of Business Development here, and we have our co-founder and CEO, Eagle, joining us today as well.
Hi, so thank you everybody, and thank you, Nicole, for introducing us. So we're going to start with zero trust. So zero trust has been something that has been a buzzword for a while, and a lot of people honestly we don't really know what exactly it is. So here are the NIST kind of like tenets of zero trust, but in a very Keto's way, I'm actually going to break it up and make it easier to digest. So first thing is networks are no longer secure. So, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in the next slide, but basically the days of like, okay, I'm in the network, so I can just use a basic password or to access it is no longer the case. Now, every single access has to be authenticated per session, so no master key, no master password. And part of that authentication has to be the client. So we have to check the laptop or desktop where the user is actually coming from, check that it's compliant, check that it's a corporate asset, and use that. And even the location, are they in the same place or are they just randomly connecting from the other side of the world? And also use a assume breach mentality and monitor everything. So have every log go to the SIEM and monitoring it and make sure that all of a sudden there's not a user connecting to a bunch of endpoints that they didn't have access to, or that they usually don't connect to 100 endpoints a day or something like that. So as I said, we're going to do a deep dive of how NIST looks at the network. And the TLDR is the enterprise and network is no longer secure. The reason for that is back in the day, in the 90s, you could assume that the network was secure because everybody was in the building. It was all, like hard lines into the computers. It was only computers that the company issued and they had antivirus and all that stuff in there. Nowadays, the networks are huge, from having VPNs and having people connect from anywhere to even within the office. You have IoT devices, you have clocks, you have cell phones from people, and all these devices that are actually not managed by the enterprise. And you can no longer trust that, like, okay, they're in the corporate network, so they're secure. Or with remote connections, you cannot say they're in the corporate network, so at least they're in our physical building. And as well, the clients in those remote areas, so like now that you take your laptop from home, or like Nicole right now is traveling, you can assume that the network where they are is actually secure and it's not hostile and people trying to attack it. So basically the whole network perimeter, while it's still very important and we still have to secure it, we cannot rely on it. We have to have an extra layer of device security and identity security. So now that we have kind of like the definition of NIST of what is zero trust, let's jump into how to implement it, because that's, at the end of the day, the goal of this webinar is for you to come out with kind of a plan of like, these are the things that we have to do to implement zero trust. And we're going to focus a little bit on the Azure way and the Microsoft way of doing it, but every single thing we're saying here can be translated to Okta, or it can be translated to AWS or anything like that. So the first thing is the conditional access. That's the one that I talked about, that will check your device, will check that you are within certain geographic region, it will check your patterns. You can set a lot of things. You might have requirements of, it has to be certain multi-factor authentication. And then the next thing is multi-factor authentication. Everything has to be multi-factor authentication. We're actually going to talk about a breach that happened. The network, to get to the network, to the VPN, was multi-factor, but then to get it to the assets inside wasn't. And they were managed to pass the network part, and they were able to break in because there was no security within the network. So every single thing has to be multi-factor authentication, and everything has to be centrally managed. You don't want to have multiple management systems that don't talk to each other, and then I actually was talking to someone that they said that they manually provision certain things because it doesn't meet their infrastructure. So you have to have kind of a central management, that every logs are sent to the same place and everything has the same source of truth. So if someone leaves the company, it gets deactivated on every place. And then for key assets, and this PCI compliance requirement and FedRAMP High and any other kind of like high compliance requirements require dual key approval. So that means that if you want access to a certain asset, someone else has to approve. And this kind of mitigates some attacks of someone compromising one account. Now you have to compromise two, or be able to kind of break the face-to-face. So we actually, like at Microsoft, we had it that we had to call the other person and tell them like, hey, it's still me, it's Igal, I need access to this asset for X, Y, and Z. And the other person actually had to kind of like also make sure that you really needed the access and it wasn't something that you could fix some other way. And then, as I mentioned, everything has to be centrally logged and monitored in the same place, so you can have a full view of your whole infrastructure, and as well as network isolation. As even though I said that we cannot rely on network isolation and network security, we still have to take care of it. And even more of isolating your network. So your corporate network, and Nicole will talk a little bit more about it in the next slide, but your corporate network and your corporate identity, you can no longer trust those because they're everywhere. So having a different network for production is something that is highly recommended in the zero trust world. And even within production, just systems that talk to each other should have access on the network side. So I'm gonna pass it to Nicole.
All right. Well, the zero trust recommendations that Egil just talked about in the previous slide, set for like a more secure future. Organizations like Microsoft and Keytos, we're taking extra steps to protect critical assets. And these steps are like identity isolation, so having a different identity for corporate functions than for accessing production, and device isolation, so having a different device for accessing production only, and then also just-in-time access. So removing standing access to resources, meaning a user only gets access to critical resources for the time that they need it. And then we're going to go ahead in the next step, the next slide, and go over some of these like real life examples of how zero trust could have prevented attacks, even though many people measure their security based on the most secure access, saying we have MFA enabled, so we're secure. And one of those attacks was the LinkedIn attack, what actually is a very famous one, and that was due to one of the engineers accessing the network via a home computer through SSH, and that ended up leading to the Twitter account of the President of the United States getting hacked. So that was one of the more famous ones.
Yeah, so that one's very interesting that Nicole brought up, because the LinkedIn attack, they were doing kind of like all the right things. And this is an old attack, 2012, but it still happens. We have seen it last year with T-Mobile. There was an SSH attack. I'll talk a little bit more in a second, but like they were doing the right things. They were using SSH keys, which are cryptographically sound. And at that time, that was kind of like the state of the art way of doing it. But that engineer was able to copy that key to their home computer that wasn't as secure as a LinkedIn computers. And that computer got hacked. The hackers got access to the SSH key and then accessed the LinkedIn network. So that shows kind of like the device security. And then the other one that I wanted to talk about was a T-Mobile attack. So, LinkedIn was a long ago, T-Mobile was last year, and it cost them $350 million of restoration fees on their attack. And that was the one that I talked about. They were doing the right thing. They had their network security, multi-factor authentication to log into the VPN, all those things. But the problem was there was a misconfigured gateway, and the attackers were able to get into the network and then brute force their way into the databases through SSH. So that shows kind of how, and I'm not calling out these companies because they were doing kind of like the right things, but the security landscape is evolving, and these attacks teach us of like, okay, now we saw that network is not enough, and now they have to do multi-factor into their SSH access and have that conditional access also to the SSH, not to the network. And last few weeks ago, we saw also with Microsoft the MFA bypass, that they were attacking accounts that hadn't set up bypass of they hadn't set up MFA, and they were able to kind of like guess the password and then set up MFA as the attackers instead of the users, which also talks about now the attack cycle is moving left of even like before setting up the identity and the multi-factor. So we have to move our security all the way to where the attackers are going and keep growing that scope to make everything more secure. And there's also always a downgrade and recovery attacks. I really like the title of this one, that you're as secure as the most secure, well, it's supposed to be as the least secure endpoint, because most people try to say like, oh yeah, we have multi-factor. But if you have one endpoint, or you might have multi-factor with YubiKeys and all this, but your recovery method is SMS, then you're as weak as SMS, because the attackers are not going to use your preferred path. They're going to use the path that they feel that is vulnerable. So if you have SMS, they'll do a SIM swap and get access. So we have to make sure that even our recovery and all our downgrades are as secure as we feel comfortable with. And with that, I just want to pass it off. Obviously, we're Ketos, and we're here to help companies go fully passwordless. And that's a key thing on the zero trust world. And we do it by closing those gaps where you might not see that there's a problem, but there's actually a problem. So we do SSH multi-factor authentication just in time for SSH endpoints, and we use your kind of secure identity for that. And we give you full visibility. We use your central identity for that, and we push everything to your SIEM. So all our products will push everything to your SIEM, so you see all the alerts and everything where you're used to seeing it. Another one that is a crowd favorite is Easy Smart Card. So that one is one that we released last month, and people are loving it because it actually makes the onboarding experience easier and more secure. So usually, they send you the passcode to get access. That's a password that someone can get and access, how I mentioned in the Microsoft bypass in the previous slide. So we actually do it fully passwordless. We scan your face. So if you're remote working from home, you can scan your face, scan your ID, and then we provision your multi-factor identity. We have Easy Monitor that will give you full visibility into your SSL health. So we have all of these tools that kind of help you close those gaps, and we are here to help all of you in your journey for this zero trust. So with that, I want to open up for questions. So if anybody has any questions that they want to ask on chat, this is the time.
And also, if there's, if you guys would like to set up some time just maybe to have like conversation one-on-one so we can answer your questions more in depth, we can do that as well.
Okay, so I see the question of where can the Easy Smart Card be implemented? So going back to all of our products, since we work with highly secure and highly compliant companies, it's kind of like I like to call it the security dial. So we can be from fully on the cloud, SaaS, you click and it's up and running, to fully on premise and anything in between. So Easy Smart Card can be from like a few clicks, and we manage all the smart card provisioning. We can even do the shipping for you and everything, to being fully on premise. We have no visibility into it, and you manage everything in your servers. And all you need is basically a Windows server, a SQL server, and your on-premise PKI. Or we can do kind of like a hybrid of like it deploys on the cloud and connects to your on-premise PKI. So as I said, it can go anywhere in between. Hope that helped address your question. All right, cool. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as Nicole said, we're here to help. So have a great day.